right now. There it goes. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to the public meeting for the draft 2023 to 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan for the Housatonic Valley and Southwestern Region Metropolitan Planning Organization. This is one of 3 of our public information meetings that we're holding on the plan. My name is Kristen Floberg. I'm a senior planner at the Western Connecticut Council of Governments, and my colleague Nick Trapka, a senior analyst at WestCOG, will also be presenting today. We have Kristen Hadjistillanos, the transportation director at WestCOG, and our executive director, Francis Pickering, also on the line if there's any other questions. So to get started, there we go. Okay. So the Western Connecticut Council of Governments hosts 2 metropolitan planning organizations, the Housatonic Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is shown here in the map in yellow, and also the Southwestern Region Metropolitan Planning Organization shown in blue down at the bottom here. The plan covers all 18 municipalities included in these 2 MPOs. The MPOs are required under Part 450 of Title 23 in the Code of Federal Regulations to update and maintain an MTP as a condition of eligibility for federal aid in transportation projects. It guides transportation investments for over 20 years. It correlates with other required involuntary studies and plans that WestCOG conducts for the MPOs, like the 4-year Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, which we are updating right now. Next slide is plan development. So we started the process early last spring by collecting data and performing analyses needed to inform the plan. We then did stakeholder and public outreach events, which in turn helped inform the development of the goals of the plan. We pulled together recommendations from past planning studies conducted by WestCOG, our state partners, and other in our member municipalities, as well as researched best practices for transportation projects. Along with the data analysis, the research, the outreach, and past studies, we were able to develop strategies and prioritize investments that would have the best return towards those identified goals, which we'll review in just a moment. Now we have completed the draft plan and we're sharing it with everyone here today during our public comment period, which is set to be completed, I think, March 9th, if I remember correctly. Next slide. So an overview of the public and stakeholder outreach that was done for the plan. The MPOs are required to follow the public involvement procedures that we've adopted in our public involvement plan, which requires holding a public information meeting like we're doing so today. However, we know involvement early in the process produces plan goals and recommendations that reflect the wishes of the community. So we also set up several opportunities to participate, including 2 community outreach events, one at the Stamford Farmers Market, which is that picture in the upper left, and the Danbury City Center Halloween on the Green event this last October, down this bottom picture here, where we had some prompting questions to get people talking about what they'd like to see in Western Connecticut and how they get around. So those were here, but we also took a lot of verbal comments and we talked to over 80 members of the public during these 2 presentations. We also had outreach flyers in English and in Spanish with an opportunity to provide feedback via email. And we had virtual outreach events as well in the fall. We did posts on social media, in our monthly newsletters, and on our website. We created an email distribution list as well as a sign-up link for people who wanted to sign up along the way. We created public notices and press releases for the comment period and information meetings that we're holding today. And we had regular updates at our MPO, which is our elected officials board, and technical advisory group, which are our public works officials during their regular monthly meetings. We also held workshops with business owners, the municipal chief elected officials, municipal planners, and public works staff to inform the plan. So plan contents, this slide provides you an overview of the plan chapters and where you can find certain topics and where they're covered. We'll go over some of these in more detail further in the presentation, but we don't necessarily have enough time to go through each and every topic that we covered. But if you see something that you are interested in, we're happy to answer any questions that we might not go through today. So we have 6 plan goals. They were developed from the input we received during public and stakeholder outreach, in addition to considering the national goals and planning factors that were provided by Congress. So we have 6 goals here. The first is preserving the existing system, so maintaining a state of good repair for our bridges and roads, our rail infrastructure, and our buses, along with anything else that just needs to maintain what we currently have. The second is improving system performance. So this can be reducing congestion rate related delays, improving the service area of a transit bus, or improving the frequency of train service. 3 here is system management and operational efficiencies. So this is creating efficiencies with the systems we already have. So this can be things like reducing your wait time at a red light using intelligent transportation systems that can have different sensors, so you're not waiting there when no one else is going by. Some other things could be smart card tickets, so allowing you to use your bus ticket to go on different buses and not just one. 4 is improving the safety of all transportation users, which is a little bit different, but kind of overlaps with implementing Complete Streets efforts. So this is, Complete Streets is a little bit different, where we're focusing on vulnerable users and expanding access on bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So that is goal number 5. Number 6 is improving the quality of life and creating a resilient transportation system. So this is making sure that we're reducing our impact on climate change, using green technologies for using electric vehicles or different ways to power vehicles, as well as reducing the impact that the urban heat island effect has on our communities. I also see there's a couple of questions coming in the chat box. We will get to those at the end, but just wanted to let you know we do see them. Okay, so on to trends and analyses. Nick will now take over for an overview of some of the trends and analyses that were conducted for the plan.
Thank you, Kristen. So we'll jump right in. Right here, we're looking at regional population trends. So regionally, we have just over 600,000 people in WestCOG. And here you can see the breakdown for each MPO from 1970 to current day, and then projected through 2050. Populations are estimated to keep increasing at a similar rate to what we've experienced at the same trajectory. And the historic population data is from the census, and the estimates are from the Connecticut DOT. Next slide, Chris. Thanks. Here we're looking at the change in population by age cohort. We compared the 2 most recent decennial censuses, 2010 and 2020. So taking a look at this chart, we can see that we've experienced a decrease in child-aged populations down there at the bottom. We saw an increase in late teen and young adults, ages 15 to 34. The data shows a decrease in ages 35 to 55, and the age group that is like the largest is the baby boomers, ages 60 plus, and we've seen the largest increase in those. This will have impacts on travel patterns as they retire and so on. All right, here we have a population density map. We can see the highest densities of people are clustered in the cities, Stamford, Danbury, and Norwalk, and along the shoreline where the Metro North main line runs and I-95. Here we have our journey to work data. This is broken down by modes, the mode taken on the journey. So we can see that for WestCOG on the leftmost bar, 68% of people drove alone, 8% of people carpooled, 10% of people used public transportation, 3% of people walked, and 1% of people fell into an other category. An example might be like taking a taxi to work, and 10% of people worked from home. I'm sorry, Kristen, I just have one more point. For municipalities on the Metro North Main Line, we can see public transportation is significantly higher. Those are Darien, Greenwich, Stamford, Westport, New Canaan, and Norwalk. What is concerning, though, is that we see a lesser amount of public transit use in the three main cities, Stamford, Danbury, and Norwalk. These are middle of the pack for transit, and we would like to see an increase since they have access to bus and train services. Next slide. So here we can see the change in percent of work trips, again, comparing the 2010 and 2020 census. So there's a lot of red reduction in driving, the red category is the reduction in driving alone, equating to a reduction in 5% of people for the whole region. And we saw an equal shift in the percent of people working from home. And that's the green category on the right. I'm looking at the WestCOG numbers on the very bottom. And we see a rise in people working from home due to the rise in telecommuting. Yeah, thank you, Kristen. So this is a heat map of residential commuter destinations. So it's people who live in the region and where they travel to work. We see the three cities again, Danbury, Norwalk, and Stamford, as hotspots, in addition to the greater Bridgeport area, and Manhattan is down there. It's covered by roads, but it is also a hotspot for destinations. Move on to the next one. Okay, another heat map. We have a crash heat map here. This is comparing data from 2017 through 2021. So that's 5 full years of data. Mapped here are serious injuries, fatalities for non-motorized and motorized users. The crash hotspots are clearly on the highways and major routes in the region because of the large traffic volumes on those roads. These hotspot locations fall into historically congested routes and areas. A couple of other ones that I would like to point out, hotspots are in New Milford Center along Route 7, and then in Newtown where 34 and 84 meet, and then in the downtowns again of our 3 cities. Exit ramps off of the Route 15 tend to have higher density, and we have projects to address that in this plan. All right. So for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, we evaluated congestion in the region. We call this the congestion management process, which is a requirement by the federal government. You can see here the area that we analyzed is different than the WestCOG boundary. This is because the federal requirements have the analysis conducted on the transportation and management area level. So we coordinated with our neighboring planning regions, MetroCOG and NVCOG, within the Bridgeport Stamford TMA to report on congestion. The one that you're looking at here is just one example of the 4 measures that we took a look at, and this is level of travel time reliability. This measures how long a trip should take versus how long it actually takes. So a good score, a score of 1, would mean your trip, if you were going on an hour-long trip, it would take you 1 hour to complete that trip. A score of 2 would mean that same trip would take you 2 hours or doubled in time. It also has every ratio in between. So taking a look at some of the colors that we see here, everything that isn't green, that dark green color, is just not good technically. So we part of the process we said was if the score is over 1.5 during any of the peak hours of the day, the segment was considered unreliable. And we can see the total score for the whole network that we measured it has a reliability score of 79.25%. We can move on, Kristen. And then the last one I'll be talking about today is our freight network. This network includes portions of the National Freight Network highway system with stretches of 84 and 95. We have freight moving on almost all of the rail lines in the region, except for the New Canaan branch. The points that you see here are freight generators. So origin locations of freight, including factories and shopping centers where goods are moving to and from. And we have sanctioned truck parking at the rest stops north and south on 95 within Darien there, and on 84 in Danbury. Now I'm going to pass it back to Kristen to talk about some strategies and investments.
Thank you, Nick. That was a great overview. So moving on to the strategies and investment portion of the presentation today, we're going to be going through some of the chapters and some of the recommendations that we included. This is just going to be a selection of projects. Like I mentioned before, we don't have time to go through all of the projects, but I do encourage you to take a look at the listing of projects, which is found in Appendix B of the plan. There we go. Okay, so the first main chapter of the plan reviews the existing and recommended transit systems. The region has 3 passenger rail lines, including the New Haven Main Line, the New Canaan Branch Line, and the Danbury Branch Line. Many of the recommendations in the plan for passenger rail are to maintain a state of good repair through track stabilizations and bridge replacements, but also include projects that would make the service more attractive to shift people out of their cars and improve safety. So the first one I have here is to implement the guidance that comes out of the New Canaan Branch Noise Abatement Feasibility Study, which includes making at-grade crossing safety improvements. The study intends to develop concept plans for each of the at-grade crossings using the Federal Transit Administration's approved supplemental safety measures. The study began just last month and is expected to be completed in 2024. The second recommendation we are sharing today is a longstanding priority for the region. It would reinstate passenger service along the 14-mile corridor from downtown Danbury to downtown New Milford, extending the Danbury branch line. Currently, it's a single track and serves freight movements only, but and it is served by the Housatonic Railroad Company. The project would include track rehabilitation, track reconfiguration, and the installation of signal and communication systems, in addition to adding 3 new train stations in northern Danbury, downtown Brookfield, and downtown New Milford. The Danbury branch from Norwalk to New Milford currently uses diesel to power the trains, and the plan recommends electrifying the entire line and making necessary track improvements. It would allow for extended 1-seat passenger service on the Danbury line into Manhattan and would reduce fossil fuel consumption and provide a more attractive transit option due to the improvement in services, further reducing congestion on the system's roadway. So also in the same chapter, we're just highlighting some of the bus efforts here. There are 3 main bus services in the region. I have a map here on the right-hand side showing this. So we have CT Transit in red here in the south, Norwalk Transit shown in blue here, and Hart Transit in pink around the Danbury area. So during our public outreach, we heard from many members of the public about the need for improved transfers between services, as well as from bus to bus, train to train. So one of the solutions that we came up with for the plan is to include intermodal hubs. So currently both the Hart Transit Hub and the Norwalk Transit Hub are not located in close proximity to a train station. So this recommendation would co-locate the main bus hub in both cities with the passenger rail station, include spaces for private intercity buses, and provide for bicycle and pedestrian facilities around it. This photo here is actually from the Danbury plan, showing their design for what the Danbury intermodal hub would look like. These improvements would improve the quality of life for the users, become a more attractive service, and create operational efficiencies through better coordination of transit schedules. On to the next chapter, we're going to focus on limited access highways in the highways and roads section. There are 3 main limited access highways in the region: I-95 and Route 15, or the Merritt Parkway in the south, and I-84 in the north. I-95 in the south, from Sherwood Island Connector in Westport to Indian Field Road in Greenwich, is ranked the worst congested corridor in the United States, according to the 2022 INREX Global Traffic Scorecard. The same segment, but going in the northbound direction, is the 3rd worst congested corridor in the United States. To address future needs on I-95 in the southwestern Connecticut region, CONDOT has initiated several planning and environmental linkages studies, particularly in Stamford and Greenwich. The goal of the studies are to identify projects to help reduce congestion, improve safety, and identify alternatives for bridge replacements. In the north, several years ago, CONDOT initiated the I-84 Danbury project to address congestion and improve mobility through the greater Danbury area. This project, which is still under development, is evaluating different concepts to help address the existing issues between the New York and Connecticut state line to exit 8 on 84. Funding for the recommendations that come out of all of these studies are actually included in the plan. Also in the highways and roads chapter are recommendations for local roads and other highways. To give you an idea of how much municipal transportation infrastructure there is in the region, for the 2020 to 2030 Western Connecticut Plan of Conservation and Development, staff went through and counted 17,710 intersections, 816 of which are signalized, over 111,000 catch basins, and 740 bridges that are the responsibility of the local municipalities in the region. The total replacement cost of the local roads and these related infrastructure is estimated to cost over $16 billion. These costs pose a significant burden on localities, especially as much of the region's infrastructure is reaching the end of design life. One of the recommendations that came out of our POCD, or the Plan of Conservation and Development, was for WestCOG and the municipalities to work together to create local transportation asset management plans, and we've also included that as a recommendation in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. The second recommendation is to continue the regional data collection program, which is run by WestCOG staff, which helps assist municipalities in developing grant proposals for local roadway improvements. So what we do for helping that is we collect data for turning movements on trails. So this is actually one of our traffic cameras that we have set up in downtown Bethel right here on the left that we just did over the fall. So for the plan, we have to plan for the movement of people, but also for goods. So that can be for the movement of construction materials, building supplies, e-commerce, and also home deliveries, just to name a few. Western Connecticut in many ways is the gateway to New England for freight, especially those that come in from the port of New York and New Jersey, and those all flow through Connecticut on I-95 and 84 to the rest of New England. And as a result, we have a lot of congestion of trucks on our roadways. There is a regular occurrence of bridge strikes in the region, affecting not only freight, but also other users on the road. Last year, over the last 5 years, there's been 60 bridge strikes on the Merritt, averaging at least one per month, which has impacts on safety, congestion, and results in costly repairs to the bridge structure. One of the recommendations in the plan is to include new overheight detection systems and signage, especially on the Merritt Parkway, where this is an occurrence very often. Moving on to active transportation. So, I went too far. So we have 2 slides here for active transportation. The transportation system needs to meet the needs of all roadway users, not just people in vehicles or trucks. So Complete Streets is woven into nearly all of the transportation planning work we do and in the plan. Over the years, WestCOG has completed transportation studies that have evaluated pedestrian and cyclist environment and made recommendations for roadway improvements. The Westport Main to Train study, which I believe we finished in 2019, focused on improving mobility and access to the train station. It includes a number of recommended improvements for pedestrians and cyclist infrastructure. This is actually the figure, an example of one of the figures from that study here on the left-hand side. You can see there's bicycle lanes included here, as well as new sidewalks and crossing infrastructure. Another project that we were highlighting here is the New Canaan-Darien bike loop, which developed and proposed a 25-mile bike loop to connect the downtowns to various destinations, including the train stations, schools, and parks. Moving on to multi-use trails, we have a section for multi-use trails as well as rec trails in the plan. And in addition to complete streets, we saw on our multi-use trails, we saw that the pandemic created a surge in demand for access to open space and rec trails, which highlights the significance of these facilities, which offer numerous benefits, which can enhance mobility, support economic development, and support mental and physical health of the residents and visitors of the region. Topography remains an ever-present challenge in routing these trails and building them, as well as other environmental constraints like wetlands. But there is an opportunity to build out these trails as listed and connect them into a regional network. The MTP recommends funding projects to complete the Norwalk River Valley Trail. And in the plan, we also suggest that we connect that to so the Norwalk River Valley Trail goes from Norwalk to Danbury. There's the Still River Greenway in Brookfield. So the plan recommends connecting the Norwalk River Valley Trail to the Still River Greenway, and even further up north to the New Milford River Greenway. We also have recommendations in there for improving the safety of people using the East Coast Greenway, including bicycle routes and lanes, as well as signage. So moving on to alternative transportation. The plan evaluates mode share to understand how people use the transportation system and to get to where they need to go. Carpooling still remains a significant portion of commute trips for work, and the plan has strategies and projects for improving the region's park and rides to support carpooling. As Nick mentioned before, work from home is the fastest growing way people get to work now. And this trend was even exacerbated during the pandemic as many people shifted to telecommuting from home. Virtual platforms have been replaced, have replaced the need to travel and participate in everyday activities such as work. A lot of people went to school from home. Medical appointments were replaced, and people even shopped from home for their groceries or for their other everyday needs, which has increased the accessibility, but also highlights the need for reliable access to internet service. We do have a study currently being conducted that identifies gaps in the network and that need investment still. Also in the plan is a section on connected and autonomous vehicles. This is still an emerging technology and we're keeping an eye on it. UConn actually has a pilot and testing facility being right now. But one of the things we're working on is understanding what kind of infrastructure connected vehicles need and how the traffic signals and other equipment communicate with the vehicles. So there are projects included in the plan for signal upgrades that would include new technology that is up to date and can communicate with these vehicles. Okay, so transportation system is also an adaptive, has to adapt to climate change and identify strategies to reduce the trend. So access, vulnerability, identifying infrastructure and assets that may be impacted by extreme weather events, as well as identifying projects that mitigate the negative impacts are an important piece of the plan. There's been a strong focus on transitioning vehicles to electric, and which includes for both passenger cars, as well as funding for transitioning buses and trains to electric or other alternative fuels. This requires investment also to the infrastructure to support the EV charging. So a lot of the system is not currently made to support such a high draw on the energy network. So there's several projects in there to support the switch over and this changing the infrastructure. So the MPO incorporates transportation performance management into the planning and all planning and programming activities, which improves decision-making. So instead of just relying on anecdotal feedback, we now have data to help benchmark and monitor progress for different performance areas. So you can see the 7 different performance measures that we are consistently keeping track of. This one here at the bottom that we're highlighting here is highway safety, and it's evaluated every year in coordination with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. It tells us that more focus and investment needs to be made in progress that improve safety for all motorists. And in the MTP, we have a series of projects that have non-motorized improvements to enhance safety for pedestrians and cyclists. Okay, on to the fun stuff, the financials. So one of the requirements of the plan is that it's financially constrained. The cost of implementing the projects in the plan must be within the levels of funding that the region is expected to receive over the next 25 years. CONDOT provides estimates for highway and transit funds, and they're reflected in the whole plan. But here I have a snapshot of the funds that we're expected to receive for the highway side. They fall into 3 main categories here, and we have it also split up by MPO just for your reference. System preservation, the top bullet here, there is about $1.5 billion available for system preservation, which includes projects like signal upgrades for outdated equipment, pavement preservation, bridge rehab, and replacing culverts. The second project type here is system improvements. So these are projects that address safety, increase mobility and system productivity, and promote economic growth. A couple projects that we have that would fall into this category include completing the Norwalk River Valley Trail that I was just talking about, making corridor improvements such as complete street projects, as well as intersection redesign projects to improve safety. The third here are major projects of statewide significance. These are projects like in the HV-MPO region, it's the I-84 Danbury project, especially the interchange with Route 7. And in the South region, this would cover all of the I-95 projects, as well as the Route 7 and Route 15 interchange project. So funding for the transit side includes projects for rail and bus infrastructure, as well as for the park and rides. For rail, some projects that are specific to one MPO, but most rail projects are multi-regional. We know the New Haven line passes through, I think, 4 different COGs at least. So those are multi-regional. So they include interim projects and eventual replacement of the Cobb Bridge, Stamford Station improvements, the Walk Bridge projects, Danbury branch line slope and track stabilization, an electrification study of the branch lines, and signal system replacements. For buses, we have here at the bottom here, and they're split up by transit district. Some of the projects include refurbing the bus area of the Stamford Transportation Center, infrastructure improvements to transit facilities to accommodate buses that have battery electric fuel, and also park and ride lot repairs and improvements. In addition to these projects, all of the, we have projects that are fiscal year illustrative projects that don't necessarily have enough funds in the total bucket to fund right now. But if funding were to become available, the MPO has a whole list of projects that they would recommend for implementation. And this is for the electrification of the Danbury branch line, implementation of a bus rapid transit service on Route 1, and those intermodal hubs in Norwalk and Danbury. For the plan, we also updated our environmental justice qualifying census tracts. Environmental justice principles are incorporated into all processes and products of federally funded transportation planning, which includes the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. The U.S. Department of Transportation outlines 3 principles to guide MPOs in their EJ evaluations, and they are: 1, to avoid, minimize, or mitigate disproportionately high and adverse human health and environmental effects, including social and economic effects on minority and low-income populations. The second is to ensure full and fair participation by all potentially affected communities in the transportation decision-making process. And 3 is to prevent the denial of, the reduction in, or the significant delay in the receipt of benefits by minority and low-income populations. The map on the left shows the tracks that were identified as environmental justice communities in the region. They were created using 3 criteria or thresholds that we call. And if any one of the thresholds is met, then the track is designated as an EJ community. So the 3 thresholds are: 1, which is the percent of minority population above MPO average, which is shown here in yellow. 2 is median per capita income below MPO average, which is shown in the red hash here. And 3 is percent of persons below the poverty level above MPO average, which is the blue hash. So you can see there's a lot of areas that have just one of these thresholds met, but many of them have all 3 or 2 of them. The map on the right is an example of one of the different measures of transportation equity that we conducted and are included in the plan. This example shows average travel time to work by tract. The average travel time in an EJ community was identified to be 29 minutes, and the average for those living in a non-EJ tract was 38 minutes. So an air quality conformity determination of the projects that are included in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and in the Transportation Improvement Program are required by the Clean Air Act of 1970. 2 of the 7 common pollutants have or had concentrations exceeding the established standards in the region. In Fairfield and Litchfield County, ozone is a non-attainment area, and in Fairfield County, fine particulate matter less than 2.5 micrometers is in an attainment maintenance area. So that means that we once were in a non-attainment area, but now we are still just on watch in an attainment maintenance area. The conformity analysis is used to show that projected emissions for the proposed projects and programs or plans do not contribute to more poor air quality and help non-attainment areas meet national ambient air quality standards. The February 2023 emissions analysis were completed by the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Results indicated that the projects and recommendations included in the plan will assist with improving air quality in the non-attainment area and move the region towards meeting all national ambient air quality standards. Okay, so on to the last slide of the presentation. How do you share your comments? So our public comment period is still going on until March 9th. Any comments that we receive will be recorded, reviewed, and addressed in the plan as appropriate. So in addition to sharing your comments with us today, you can also email plan@westcog.org if you think of any other comments you'd like to share with us after the meeting today. or you can mail your comments to the WestCOG office at 1 Riverside Road, Sandy Hook, Connecticut. So if anyone has any comments today, we're happy to receive them. I see that there are quite a few in the chat box that we can write down, but let me see if there are any questions. And if you'd like to share them, I think you can still raise your hand. Let me stop sharing my screen. Stop sharing. There we go.